Well, hello, friends, and welcome to This Week at Little Hills. This week at Little Hills, it is snowy and cold and windy, and that brings me to something we should talk about before we get into this week's catechism question, and that's our service this week. We are a hybrid church that meets online and in person with a church family that spans multiple states and countries, and so tonight, because of that, we are going to go online only, and we're doing that for a few reasons. First, the current weather forecast seems to indicate that the storm may track back into our area around the time of our service. And if you were with us last January, we had a similar storm. It came in during the service, and it made it incredibly dangerous and difficult for our church family to get home after the service. So we're going to try to avoid that. On top of that, with the extreme cold, with illness, and also, crucially, a difficulty even getting into the building because our parking lot has not yet been plowed and we don't know if it will be ready for use by the service time. We're just going to go ahead and enjoy the warm fellowship of our online church family together. What could be better than that? So let's go ahead and plan on that at 5:30 p.m. Still the full worship service, so join us for that. Well, as we prepare for worship tonight, let's go ahead and get a start. We're not going to have Sunday School Express tonight, but as we prepare for worship and we think about what God calls us to do, let's look at this week's catechism question, and then we'll address parts of that question in Sunday School Express next Sunday, 15 minutes after service. And as we think about this question, it's the question 18 in the New City Catechism. It's a question about, will we face judgment for our idolatry and disobedience, the things that we do where our hearts chase after things other than God? And the answer we find in the Catechism, but also in Scripture, is yes. In fact, we read in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 these words in verse 14, "For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil." God is going to look at the record of our lives. The question is that all he's going to look at? When we turn to Jesus, when we say, I can't do it on my own, we're told again and again and again in Scripture that God takes that record of good and bad in our lives, that we know if we look honestly at our lives, if we really explore what our lives look like, we know is going to be a record that puts us on the losing end of things. He takes that and he looks at the record of Jesus' life instead. And all that sin that wants to jump out and ensnare us, what does he do? He takes that, he pushes that away, and he gives us Jesus' righteousness. So as we come to worship tonight and we think about the wise men and how they followed the star and how they took action after what we looked at last week with their encounter with Herod, let's think about how we this week take action to follow Jesus as well. Because there will be judgment, but there's grace when we follow Jesus. Hope you have a wonderful and blessed day, that you stay warm, and I will see you online in just a little bit.